Hello, I'm Mina, and I will be talking about the story "The Lamp at Noon" by Sinclair Ross. The Lamp at Noon revolves around a husband and wife, Ellen and Paul, and their infant. Paul is a farmer, so the family lives on a prairie farm and relies on the crops, both for income and the source of food. However, the crops are failing under constant desert-like drought and relentless windstorms. Ellen voices her fears. The fields aren't growing, the dust is harming the baby's breathing, and the land may dry out beyond recovery, leaving them with no chance of livelihood and future. Paul, however, is too proud to leave. Convinced he can salvage the crop with his skills, he rejects the idea of moving elsewhere. Their marriage hangs on by a thread, as Paul grows frustrated with what he sees as Ellen's constant demands, while Ellen becomes increasingly frustrated with his small-minded stubbornness. The story ends tragically. Paul goes to the barn and is shaken by the sight of his malnourished, unhealthy horses. He begins to think Ellen might be right after all and heads back to her to tell her. But Ellen is gone, and so is the baby. After frantic search, he finds them, only to discover the baby has died. The storm, however, has passed. On the other hand, a bit about the author. According to the Canadian Encyclopedia, Sinclair Ross was born on January 22nd, 1908 in Saskatoon, Canada, and became one of Canada's most respected writers. Raised by his mother, he spent most of his life working as a banker and wrote in his spare time. Many of his stories are set on the Canadian prairies, just like Lamp at Noon, and explore themes of isolation. I believe the story centers on Paul's naivety and complacentness, flaws that ultimately cost him his child's life. He is deeply insecure about Ellen's previous wealth and worries he is failing to provide. To prove himself, he refuses to admit Ellen is right about wanting more for their family. He is even too naive to accept a job from her father, though it would have greatly benefited their lives. As the story progresses, the relationship deteriorates along with Paul's willingness to listen. This underscores the importance of empathy in communication and in any close relationship, as well as the dangers of insecurity and pride when they take over. Ellen pleads, "I can't stand it any longer. He cries all the time." "You will go, Paul. Say you will. We aren't living here. Not really living." Which shows just how many times she has tried to make Paul understand her feelings, only to be dismissed. Had Paul put himself in Ellen's shoes, he might have grasped how brutal this life is for a new mother. Instead, his judgment is clouded by his honor. A strong, recurring theme is pride and ignorance. Paul believes he must provide on his own and refuses help from anyone, especially from Ellen's father. As he says, "I can't go, Ellen, living off your people. Charity, stop and think about it. This is where I belong. I can't do anything else." This line clearly illustrates his resistance to help, driven by dignity and insecurity. I can relate to this in a smaller way. If I hold a strong opinion and am proven wrong, it's hard to admit defeat. Often it's really a fear of embarrassment. I'm not excusing Paul's mistakes, but I understand the feelings behind them. He had enough confidence in his farming to take Ellen away from her former life and raise a child with her, yet in the end everything became his fault. The storm itself works as a symbol of Paul's inner state. At the beginning, he's angry and frustrated with himself and with Ellen, so the storm intensifies, creating more and more problems, just like his attitude. He remains headstrong until the very end, when he finally comes to his senses and realizes Ellen is right. And then the storm is over, mirroring his shift in perspective. Tragically, it takes the death of his child for him to truly open his eyes. I enjoyed the story because it highlights the real dangers and consequences of ego and ignorance, traits that can seem harmless in small doses but become devastating in extreme scenarios. The ending is shocking, yet Ross Sinclair still evokes sympathy for Paul despite his failings, and I appreciated that complexity. Thank you so much.